This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
Okay, before we get started, check out nectargrowth.com. nectargrowth.com. It's free to join, but not for long. Nectar is an extension of the roller coaster. It's where you can start your own journey of self-exploration and growth. In Nectar, you'll find different topics of interest, daily blogs, affirmations, journal prompts, and you can connect with some of the fantastic coaches that have been on the roller coaster. Soon, we'll be adding videos, meditations, live discussions, and events. Our signature course is a journey of self-improvement, and it's valued at $397. But once you join, it's available to you at no cost. So if you're feeling stuck, if you feel like you need to change and not sure where to start with Nectar Growth Network. Come join us. You know you're worth it. Now, let's get on with today's show. Betrayal doesn't come from your worst enemies. It comes from the ones that we trust. It's a painful experience to go through because your perception and understanding of someone gets shattered. The trauma experienced from betrayal can stick with you forever if you don't take the time to heal, because time alone won't heal it. Joining me today is Dr. Debi Silber of the PBT Institute, and she conducted a study on betrayal and made 3 groundbreaking discoveries. And today we're going to explore what they are and how we can heal from trauma. Hi, Dr. Debi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you. So tell me about your study.
Yeah, well, I don't think anybody studies betrayal, like wakes up and says, I think betrayal is a good topic to study. No, it's my 30th year in business, as life would morph and change, so would business. And it was health, mindset, personal development. And then I had a horrible betrayal from my family. And I thought I did everything I needed to do to heal. And then a couple of years later, it was my husband. And I looked at the 2 experiences and I was like, what's similar to these 2? And I realized I never really took my needs seriously. And so it was time. And so I got him out of the house, and here I was, 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business. I was 50 and I'm like, we're going back for a PhD. It was so really intuitively guided. And it was in transpersonal psychology, the psychology of transformation and human potential. And while I was there, I did a study. I studied betrayal. What holds us back? What helps us heal? And what happens to us physically, mentally, and emotionally when the people closest to us lie, cheat, and deceive. So that study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries, which changed my health, my family, my business, my life.
So you mentioned, you examined what holds us back. What is that? Is there one thing that holds us all back? Is there a root cause, or is it just a mosaic of everything?
Yeah. Well, there were actually 3 groups in the study, and I can get to what the discoveries were, but there were 3 groups in the study who did not heal. And the first it was the group that was numbing, avoiding, distracting. So this was the group where, this was just so painful, and they ran to their doctor to who put them on mood stabilizers or anti-anxiety medications, or they would drink or emotionally eat. And it may have made the day a bit easier to get through, but not without a price. It held back their healing. The second group was the group where they just refused to accept their betrayal. They had their story and they were sticking with it, and that was it. But the third group, this was so interesting because this was the group where the betrayer had very little consequences. And whether it was out of religious reasons, that was a big one, financial fear, not wanting to break up a family, just fear of the unknown, fear in general, they just did anything they could just to put it behind them and just, move forward. But I only saw 2 things with that group. And it was a further deterioration of the relationship. And 2, that group by far was the most physically sick. Your
Okay,
broken heart can't handle that. Yeah. Like it wasn't, and this is the thing. Because it's so scary just to have that complete and utter death and destruction of the old, we're like patching it up and we're trying to make it okay. And no, but with betrayal, it's so huge. It lends itself to the complete and utter death and destruction, but with that, you have the ability for this beautiful rebirth. Now, that we're healing is always a choice, whether you rebirth this amazingly strong, confident, empowered version of you and you move on. Like that's what I did with my family. It wasn't an option to rebuild with them. Or if the situation lends itself, if you're willing, if you want to, as to totally transform people, you can have something new. So that's what I did with my husband. Not long ago, we married each other again. New rings, new vows, new dress, and our 4 kids as our bridal party. And I never in a bazillion years would have done anything like that if I wasn't totally different. And for sure, if he wasn't totally different.
so you mentioned rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
What does the rebirth process look like?
Yeah, it's grueling. I'll be honest with you. It takes a long time. And what we see is within the PBT Institute, people come in with these symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome, which was actually one of the discoveries, that there's this collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal. It's known as post-betrayal syndrome. And we've had 25,000 people at least take our post-betrayal syndrome quiz on the site to see to what extent they're struggling. But then what happens is that they can either fully heal, where they're actively moving through. This is the second discovery, that there are 5 stages we go through to fully heal. And I'm happy to share them with you, to this very strong, empowered place called post-betrayal transformation. That was actually the third discovery, that healing from betrayal is very different than other life crises, death of a loved one, disease, natural disaster, because think about it, like I've lost loved ones. I had disease. I was in the ICU for 11 days. So, but I was like, you know what? Betrayal feels different for me. I didn't want to assume. So I asked all my study participants, and I was like, if you've been through other traumas besides betrayal, does it feel different for you? Unanimously, they said, oh my gosh, it's so different. And it's so different because it feels so intentional. So we take it so personally. So the whole self is shattered and the whole self has to be rebuilt. Confidence, worthiness, belonging, rejection, abandonment, trust, they're all shattered. So when you heal from your experience and you heal and rebuild the self, you are in this place of post-betrayal transformation. I'm not even sure if I answered your question.
It's okay. We love rabbit holes on the roller coaster.
Just took you down one right there.
Okay, so I want to go back. You mentioned the 5 stages to heal.
Yeah.
Now, the first thing that pops to mind when somebody hears the word betrayal is, I think most people's minds are automatically going to go towards, an affair in a marriage or something like that. But what are some of the other ways that betrayal is manifested into our lives?
Yeah. And, I define it as the breaking of a spoken or unspoken rule. And every relationship has them. The way it works is the more you trust and the more you depend on that person, the deeper the betrayal. So imagine, let's say there's a child who's totally dependent on their parent, right? And the parent does something awful. That's going to have a different impact than, let's say, your best friend sharing your secret. Still a betrayal, not the same magnitude of cleanup needed, because it's still that breach of trust. And the way it works is the more you trust, and if the person you trusted the most proves untrustworthy, well then, how do you feel about trusting other people, right? If the one you'd run to and other people are causing harm are the ones causing the harm, where do you go? So it shatters our sense of safety and security. This was the person, or these are the people who gave us a sense of safety and security. So when this is the very person, or these are the people to shatter that safety and security, it's like, what happened here? It's a lot to move through.
Yeah. And it's those, as I mentioned in the introduction, it's those people that are closest to us. They're the only ones that can betray us, because some random guy on the street, they can't betray us because we don't have that emotional bond. We don't have that level of trust with them.
And we can be betrayed, of course. When you get the heart involved and you get the, a level of trust involved, it's a whole different thing. But actually, and I remember in the study researching, even when companies, there's this thing, it's called a love versus hate principle. And let's say, you trust this company, and then all of a sudden you thought this product was good for you and you find out it's bad for you. We would rather buy something, use something, knowing it's bad for us, than be duped.
That's so true. And what just popped into my mind was, wasn't it Volvo? One of their vehicles, they had a vehicle that was supposed to, I mean, Volvo was, sort of an eco vehicle, and people were buying this particular vehicle because, it was a more environmentally friendly or whatever it was. And then they discovered it wasn't. And people were outraged.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, I never made that connection that, between a product and a brand and a company, that you could have that level of betrayal. But you're right. It's the people that are closest to us, but it's also the things that we choose to have in our life.
That's it. And that's the thing. I mean, where someone can go buy cigarettes or alcohol or whatever, where they know it's not healthy, but they know. It's that feeling of, wait, I trusted you. I trusted your marketing and what you said. And that's when that love turns to hate.
And then to heal, we have to go through the 5 stages. Is it like, when somebody dies, you go through the 7 stages of grief? Is it that you're always, these 5 stages are always what you go through, or it could be a mix and match for people?
The 5 stages of grief, that's just a separate thing. These are the 5 stages that were, it was proven. We saw it. I'll never forget my study chair saying, I handed over the research, said, oh my gosh, she says, Debbie, you discovered a process here. And that was the moment I knew there's now a predictable way to move through this. The order does not switch. You cannot skip a stage. What happens is you may get stuck in and I'll go through the stages and you'll see why. There's one stage in particular where most people land and stay. But what happens is, as you move through the stages, you kind of outgrow one as you move into the next. That's how I really saw it. So you want me to go through the stages?
Please do.
Okay. So stage 1 was like a setup stage. And I saw this with all of my study participants, me too. If you imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What I saw with everybody was this real heavy lean on the physical and the mental, and kind of neglecting the emotional and the spiritual. So what does it look like? Looks like we're really good at thinking and doing, and not really prioritizing the feeling and being. But it's in the feeling and being, that's where our intuition lies. And we turn that down. Now, that's not to say if you're just busy thinking and doing, you're going to be betrayed. It's just what I typically saw. So stage 2, this is by far the scariest of all of the stages. And this is shock. This is D-Day, Discovery Day. This is like when that person takes the mask off and you learn who they've been this whole time. And so you've ignited, this is the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. So you've ignited the stress response. Now you're headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete and total state of chaos and overwhelm. You can't wrap your mind around the information you just learned. You're like, what? It makes no sense. And your worldview has just been shattered. Your worldview is your mental model, how you view the world, the rules that prevent chaos, right? Don't go there, trust this person, this is how life works. And in a moment, all of the rules have just been shattered. The bottom is bottomed out on you, and a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. So it's terrifying. So, but think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You'd grab hold of anything and everything you could to stay safe and stay alive. And that's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this experience? Who can I trust? Where do I go? How do I feed my kids? Right? Like, it's as practical as can be. But here's what happens. Once you've figured out how to survive, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma of where you just came from, you think it's good. So you're like, okay, all right, we got this. And you start planting roots here, and then 4 things happen. The first thing is you're not meant to stay here long, but we don't know that. So this is where we plant ourselves and stay. So the first thing that happens is we start getting all of these small self benefits. You get to be right. You get your story. You get someone to blame. You get a target for your anger. You get sympathy from everybody you tell your story to. You don't have to do the hard work of learning to trust again. Should I trust you? Should I trust you? Forget it. I'm not trusting anybody. And you start planting deeper roots. Now, because you're here a while, your mind starts doing things like, well, maybe you're not all that great. Maybe you deserved it. Maybe, and you're entertaining these kind of ideas. So you're planting deeper roots. Now, because like energy attracts like energy, you're calling circumstances and people and relationships towards you to confirm, yep, this is exactly where you belong. It gets worse, but I'll get you out of here. Because it's so bad, but you don't know there's anything better. Right here is where you resign yourself. You're like, this feels so bad. This feels so terrible, but this is where I am. I don't know how to escape this. So right here is where you start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, keeping busy, reckless behavior, anything to numb, avoid, distract yourself from what you're, from what's so painful to feel or face. So think about it. You do this for a day, a week, a month, to habit now, right? A year, 5, 10, 15, 20. And I can see someone 20 years out and say, that emotional eating you're doing, or that drinking you're doing, or that numbing in front of the TV you're doing, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? And they would look at me like I'm crazy. And they'd say, that happened 20 years ago. But do you see, all they did was lock themselves in this holding pattern of stage 3. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I speak to so many people that share that they're stuck.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what's going on.
They're stuck in this habit of repeating patterns, and it's only just bad enough to complain about, but not bad enough to do anything about it.
Yeah. And that's, they think, here's where they think, well, just time will miraculously do something. Well, I have the proof from the post-betrayal syndrome quiz. Time does not heal this. We've heard time heals all wounds, not betrayal, because people write things like, my betrayal happened 40 years ago and I can still feel the hate. My betrayal happened 35 years ago. I'm unwilling to trust again. My betrayal happened 15 years ago. I feel gutted. So we know that time is not going to change this, but that's why this is that stage 3. Transformation doesn't even happen until stage 4 and 5. So here we are in this stage 3. And like you said, it's manageable. We're tolerating things. We figured out it's very action oriented. We're doing what we need to do, but we're definitely not healed. Want me to finish the stage?
4 and 5.
Yeah. So anyway, if you're willing to let go of these small self benefits, grieve, mourn the loss, bunch of things you need to do, you move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. So here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo my betrayal, but I can control what I do with it. So I always use this example of, if you've ever moved to a new house, office, condo, apartment, whatever, your stuff's not all there. It's not quite cozy, but it's going to be okay. And when you're in this mental place, you're turning down the stress response. You're not healing just yet, but at least you stop the massive damage you've been doing in stages 2 and stage 3. What's so interesting to this stage also is, if you were to move, you don't take everything with you. You don't take the stuff where it's like, I've outgrown that. That doesn't really represent the version of me I want to be in my new space. And what I found was, if your friends weren't there for you, or that misery loves company kind of group that you've been hanging out with while you're in that stage 3, right here is where you've outgrown them. And people say to me all the time, what the heck, I've had these friends 10, 20, 30 years. Is it me? Yes, it is. You're undergoing a transformation, and it's, the same relationships may not be working for you now. Anyway, when you're in this space, you're making it mentally, and emotionally okay, you move into the fifth most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. So the body starts to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise. You didn't have the bandwidth for that earlier. You were surviving. Now you do. Your mind is healing. You're making new rules, new boundaries based on what you see so clearly now. And you have a new worldview based on the road you just traveled. And the four legs of the table, remember in the beginning, it was just all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
Okay, so for me, those first 3 stages
Mhm.
are what happens subconsciously after we've met with betrayal.
Mhm.
That's just sort of where we evolve to. And if you acknowledge it or if you don't, the line is drawn at stage 3. And then stage 4 and 5 are conscious decisions.
You're right. You're actively trying
You're
to.
actively choosing something different. So my question is there's this teeny little sliver in between there. How do you make the shift from that subconscious to that conscious, that inspired action, that moving forward? What's that transit? How do you make that mind shift or create that transition, that pivot?
I did 2 TEDx talks, and I remember saying in the first one, which was 6 weeks after my betrayal, by the way. I don't even know how I did that. Anyway, yeah,
I'm just like,
I don't even know how that happened.
talk about pouring salt on an open wound.
Oh, but well, you know what? In that one, I kind of reference it, but I wasn't really ready to go for it and talk about it. It was the second one. So that one was stop sabotaging yourself. The second one, do you have post-betrayal syndrome? That's where I was ready. But anyway, to answer your question, I remember saying in that talk, when the pain of where you are becomes bigger than the fear of the unknown, that's when you jump. So really, though, the people hanging out at stage 3, when they realize they have to take a look at, you can't change anything you're not aware of, right? So awareness is huge. They have to be aware that they are numbing, avoiding, distracting. They have to be aware that they're settling for maybe a relationship or a level of health or a job or a lifestyle or a life that's just, a representation of someone who's settling. It's a big awareness thing. And then from there, it's, I find a lot of people get very angry, but then anger can move you. And then that's actually okay. But it's that awareness first.
Is it at that awareness, if and when somebody hits that level of awareness, is that then when they are reaching out to you for help?
We have 2 different types of people who come in, and men and women. They are just obviously struggling from their betrayal. I mean, they're in that stage 2. They're blindsided, shocked. What the heck just happened to my life? That's often who comes in. But there's also the person who their betrayal could have been years and years and years ago. And very often, like I can spot an unhealed betrayal a mile away. And one of the ways we see it is in repeat betrayals. So someone had, an experience, a negative experience, and then it's like it keeps changing. And the faces change, but it's the same thing. And they realize there's not that it must be me, meaning I'm at fault here, but there's a beautiful lesson to be learned that you are lovable, worthy, deserving, that you need better boundaries in place, whatever it is. And when they realize that, then they're ready to do the work. But anybody coming into our institute, I mean, they know they have to be ready. This isn't a support group. It isn't like the Ain't It Awful Club. We don't, this is research based. This is based on what the 25,000 people said they need, what the research proved, what worked for me, for our certified coaches. And I saw what didn't work. So I'm like, there's definitely a place for that. But this is about the support that's there is to lift and inspire. And it's very forward moving. It's like training wheels until you don't need them.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to go back to a point where you said you're talking about the repeat betrayal.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's that realization that the common denominator in all of the repeat pattern, the person that was in every bad relationship, every betrayal, what's the constant? It's you. So
Exactly.
so it's not, it's so easy to fall into that trap of it's them. That guy was an asshole. This person was unhealthy. Whatever your excuse is for
Mhm.
attracting that relationship into your life, the one constant is you. So either the whole world has to change or you have to change.
Exactly. And what's like, even in my own example, right? I mean, here it was, I looked at the two experiences, and boundaries were always getting crossed. I never took my own needs seriously. So for me to enroll in this PhD program, for me, it was so gigantic, and it was so drastic, and it was such a, almost like a declaration of, no, 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 it's my turn. This is important. This is what I'm doing. But think about it. It changed everything. It changed everything. And I had a very powerful story, right? The most important people in my life all betrayed me. But when you realize, wow, I can have such a better story, I could be the hero or the heroine of my story. I can heal. I can have opportunities that I never would have had access to if the only benefit of hanging on to my story was my story.
And so many people, that is their crutch in
Exactly.
life, is they repeat their stories because, well, one, if they repeat their stories, if they cling to those stories, it means that they can stay in their comfort zone, whether it's
Mhm.
good, bad, or ugly, they stay there. And it's
Exactly.
it's the anchor, the crutch of that story that keeps them there. And because they repeat that story to everybody.
Of course. And
And
it's so familiar.
and that's it. And it's, something has to switch, something has to click for somebody to go, oh, wait a second, maybe it's me, not them.
Exactly. You're so right. And it's either they get fed up enough realizing that it's just a lifetime of the same pattern, or very often it could be those, the numbing tactics, the methods of mass distraction, right? Something that they're doing, which is now causing, even more harm. And it's like this, and sometimes like, let's say they can have a health crash, like for example, someone has a betrayal and they can't cope, it is horrible, so they're drinking, and then they get it, then they're drinking and driving, they get into an accident, you know what I mean? Like, just as an example, now it could be like, what the heck, I gotta wake up and fix this now, you see? So very often the strategies we choose to heal, which we choose to numb, contribute to this huge crash and wake up call, which then can be a great thing. But betrayal too, I'll say it shows you who someone really is, or it wakes the betrayer up to who they temporarily became. I mean, it's as much of a shock and traumatic, as it is for the person who's been betrayed. It can be equally as big of a wake up call for the betrayer.
Yeah. And, you know, it goes back to, when somebody does wrong, when somebody says something hurtful, it's not about you.
Mhm.
It's always about them.
Yep.
And although the betrayal is painful, you know, I really have to question how often somebody intentionally betrays somebody.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if there's any way to measure. I mean, if you're talking about something like a marriage, and somebody has an affair, you can question, well, was that intentional or was there something else going on? There's so many different levels that you can dive into with that.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it would take, certainly in your situation where you said that, you made this pivot, everything in your world changed, and it
Mhm.
actually led to your remarriage.
Yeah. And it led to the Institute and the TEDx talks and the books and the everything. And it was because really integrity is my highest value. So can you imagine someone like me getting betrayed when I value integrity more than anything? I've lived an entire life with a very simple rule of, if it's going to hurt someone, just don't do it. Like, and I think that through. So every action is thought of like, will this hurt that person? Or then it's like it's a no. And I assume that the world is following those same rules. Always, I'm always shocked to realize that that's not the case. So it wasn't even, and this is going to sound so selfish, it wasn't even enough that I could heal from this. I remember moving through it and saying, no, the injustice was so great that it was like, if I heal from this, I'm taking everybody with me. And I remember really feeling that. And it seems like that's what's happening.
Wow, that's a powerful story, Dr. Debi. Where's the best place for people to connect with you and learn more about I'm going to say it wrong, PBT Institute?
Yeah, PBT Institute. They should just take the quiz. I mean, the
Take
quiz
the quiz. Okay.
The post-betrayal syndrome quiz to see to what extent you're struggling. And you could just find that at the PBT, as in post-betrayal transformation, thepbtinstitute.com/quiz.
And I'm sure there's people out there still carrying their trauma from betrayal and they don't even know it. Mm-hmm. If you're listening and you want to take that quiz or learn more about Dr. Debi, make sure to check out the show notes. I'm going to have all of the links in there. And Dr. Debi, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's people like you that give people like me a voice. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
Life is like a roller